Hey you guys, Dr. Jackie here. So we have our last sentence combining technique for the course. This time the independent clause will come first in the sentence. The independent clause will be introductory and the dependent clause will come at the end. Now look, an independent clause is capitalized because it'll be the first word of the sentence, and every new sentence in English is capitalized. The dependent clause will come at the end, and in general it's a small letter unless it's a proper name, a proper noun, or the name of a name, or the pronoun I. Remember, all clauses have a subject and a verb. An independent clause is independent, so it can stand by itself. A dependent clause cannot. It is dependent on an independent clause to make a complete sentence. And that's because we add subordinating conjunctions to the front of the dependent clause. Now, notice when it comes at the end, there's no punctuation between. When the dependent clause comes at the end of the sentence, right there, there's no punctuation in the middle. Now, I don't know why people just want to put a comma in there so bad when the dependent clause comes at the end. But don't let that booger you up. Don't put a comma when the dependent clause comes at the end of the sentence. So let's take a look at the sentences. We already know they're complete. They're complete sentences. They have a subject and a verb and a complete thought. And now this time we're going to look at this sentence. Okay? So learning to speak a second language is helpful for businesses. And I'm going to add to this because, right? They is not a proper noun. It's not I. So it becomes a small t. This is our subordinating conjunction. Okay. So once we do this, this becomes dependent. In other words, it can't stand by itself. Because they like to hire bilingual workers for their offices, what else? What else is there? So because this is at the end of the sentence, we're lucky to have an introductory independent clause. This is a sentence. It stands by itself. So all we do is we take out the period. Because is not a proper noun or I, so we make it a small b. Finished. Learning to speak a second language is helpful for businesses because they like to hire bilingual workers for their offices. It's a really nice sentence put together. And you notice because the dependent clause comes at the end of the sentence, there's no punctuation between the independent and the dependent clause. Now, just to remind you, if the dependent clause comes first, there is a comma between. But when it comes at the end of the sentence, there's no comma. So let's do the second one. The moon moves in front of the sun tonight. It is called an eclipse of the sun. And we're going to let's add when. Okay, so we'll add when to the beginning. We know that it is not a proper noun and it's not I, so we're going to make it a small one. This is our subordinating conjunction. And once we add the subordinating conjunction to the beginning, it's a dependent clause. It can't stand by itself. So when it is called an eclipse of the sun, what? What more do you want to say? Tell us more. All right? It requires an independent clause to make it a complete thought. And the independent clause is at the beginning. It's introductory. So to combine them, we just take out the period. This is not a proper noun, so we make it a small w. And there it is. There's no punctuation between the independent and dependent clauses when the dependent clause comes at the end. So here it is at the end of the sentence, and the introduction is at the beginning of the sentence. The moon moves in front of the sun tonight when it is called an eclipse of the sun. Okay, so there's no punctuation when the dependent clause comes at the end of the sentence. Okay, you guys, take care of yourselves.